Welcome back. We talked in the first section about our Christness. And I'd like to describe Christness in a little bit different terms in this half of the video. But I'd like to suggest that what we did in the first half is a keyhole through which we can look at a whole new spiritual dimension. And looking through that keyhole of Christness, I'd like to tell you another story. I'd like to begin by telling you about Mother Teresa of Calcutta. Our Catholic brothers and sisters may know more about her than we do, but let me tell you what you need to know about Mother Teresa of Calcutta. She was born in Albania. She joined a convent in Ireland, and when she finished her and became a full-fledged member of the convent, she was sent to Calcutta, India. The nuns that she had been part of were a teaching ministry, and they taught young Catholic girls, and the school that she was assigned to was in Calcutta, India. Now, in the summertime, the girls were still under the nuns' care. So what they would do, because of the oppressive heat in the summer, is they would take their students in a train and go up into the mountains where it was cooler. You've heard of Darjeeling tea. They went up into that region, which is elevated and cooler. And on this particular instance, one particular time that they were taking the girls in the summer up the mountains, as Mother Teresa was in the train, she heard the Lord telling her that he wanted her to work with the beggars that she saw lying in the gutters as the train went through Calcutta. And of course, that was unexpected and unsolicited, and so she tried to ignore it. And that word kept gnawing at her and coming back at her, and God was relentless and kept speaking to her in profound terms that he wanted her to minister to the dead and dying people in the gutters of Calcutta. Now we know today, the time has passed, that that's exactly what she did. When she came back down after the summer vacation was over, she went to the administration of the city of Calcutta, and they gave her a temple, an abandoned Hindu temple, where she could take the people that were dying in the gutters and clean them, feed them, however she could minister to them. In Mother Teresa's own words, she ended up primarily giving these people a dignified death. Now, the word got around about Mother Teresa's exceptional ministry, particularly in the Catholic channels. And young girls who were daughters of the nobility or a merchant class or whatever it might be, began coming to Mother Teresa and asking if they could join the work. Mother Teresa didn't go out and recruit nuns, but nevertheless, she started an order called Sisters of Charity. She got the Pope to approve it and authorize it. And if a young lady came to Mother Teresa, she made them promise that they would minister to the poorest of the poor. They had to swear themselves to poverty, obedience, and chastity, but a fourth thing they had to swear themselves to, and that was to work with the poorest of the poor, and in order to do that, they had to live like the poorest of the poor. So the nuns that came into the Sisters of Charity only had a pair of sandals, a bucket, and 2 saris. And the bucket was to wash the sari that they weren't wearing so they could continue to keep cleanliness. That's all they had. This is the ministry which you've heard about. Now, as Mother Teresa began to be noticed, the first major award she won was an award called Possum in Terrace, which was delineated by St. Ambrose University here in the Quad Cities. And she was actually here and received that. But then as her fame became more and more and more, she actually won the Nobel Prize, as most of you know. That led to interview after interview, and here were the questions that the interviewers would pose to Mother Teresa. They would say, how in the world can you minister to the dead and dying in the gutters? And how in the world is it possible for you to ask these young noble girls from noble families to live like the poorest of the poor and to minister to the poorest of the poor? Now, when Mother Teresa would respond, and I'm about to tell you how she responded, people did not understand this language at first. But it's now become disclosed enough that people understand it. But this is what Mother Teresa said. She'd say, I don't minister to the dead and dying, and the sisters don't minister to the poorest of the poor. We minister directly to Jesus Christ of Nazareth. Well, people couldn't understand what she meant. And she went on to say, you see, Jesus Christ is alive and walking on this earth, cleverly disguised as the dead and dying and the poorest of the poor. So when we do our ministry, we're ministering directly to Jesus Christ. And when she's asked to cite a scripture, she cites the scripture Matthew 25, in which Jesus says, if you do it to the least of these, my brethren, you're doing it unto me. That's the scripture that she would cite. Now, as time has gone on and Mother Teresa's legend has magnified itself, people have begun to understand that kind of language. Well, I've always been interested in Mother Teresa of Calcutta, and for some reason, now we're cutting back to my own personal contribution to this story. For some reason or another, I had hurt my shoulder. When I would go to bed at night, I would be asleep or try to sleep for a few hours, and my discomfort, I'd go out to the couch because of my shoulder difficulty. And the shoulder, and then I would go back into the, so back and forth and back and forth. And one particular night on my third trip out to the couch, God gave me this notion, this revelation, if you will, in its entirety. And here's what he told me. He said, it is true, Tom. Jesus Christ is alive today and walking on this earth, cleverly disguised as Tom Wright. Cleverly disguised as you, the viewer. It shocked me. In other words, what this revelation was that Jesus Christ is not only found in the dead and dying, he's not only there in the poorest of the poor, he's cleverly disguised as me, and he's cleverly disguised as you. Now, we're talking about Christness, and I'm trying to expand the concept because God expanded the concept with me. Jesus Christ is alive and well and walking on earth, cleverly disguised as you and I. Well, when this hit me, I did the same thing I did with the notion of Christness at first. I said, is there anything in my experience or is there anything in Scripture that could corroborate something like this being true? I actually kind of said a meditative prayer, and immediately I thought of Jimmy.